The atonement. Paul's hand hovered over the phone, a phantom weight pressing down on his chest. He hadn't spoken to his son Jack in a decade of birthdays missed, holidays unshared, and milestones passed in silence. He had chosen to walk away, a decision that had haunted him with the quiet persistence of a ghost. Now that ghost was no longer content to whisper. It demanded to be seen, to be faced. This was not a story of forgiveness. It was a story of a bargain struck with a terrible entity. The first call was a dead end, a voicemail. The second, a curt, "Don't call this number again." But Paul, fueled by a new chilling sense of purpose, did not give up. He took small, consistent steps, as the video would say. He sent letters that went unanswered. He showed up at Jack's workplace only to be turned away. He believed he was trying to prove he's committed, but a darker, more insidious force was driving him. Paul hadn't just left his family, he had escaped something. A whisper in the dark that had followed him for years. A sense of being hunted, of an inevitable reckoning that could only be staved off by constant motion, by running. He had run from his family to save them, to put distance between them and the growing emptiness within him. Now, years later, the running had stopped. The emptiness was no longer a void, it was a presence, and it was demanding to be fed. His determination to make amends was a leash, and the entity was pulling. He wasn't seeking forgiveness, he was seeking an anchor. He had to be close to his son. He had to see him. He needed to be near the one person who could truly feel the full weight of his past decision, not for the sake of reconciliation, but for the sake of a ritual. The meeting, when it finally happened, was not filled with heartfelt apologies and reluctant hugs. It was a tense conversation in a sterile coffee shop where Jack's anger was a wall Paul couldn't penetrate. But Paul wasn't there for a hug. He was there to make a connection, to share the burden, to pass the darkness on. He wasn't trying to create a better future. He was trying to escape a past that could no longer be outrun. The second chance wasn't for him. It was for the thing that had been patiently waiting for years for a new host. And as Paul watched his son walk away, the anger in Jack's eyes was no longer a deterrent. It was an invitation. The pain of the past was no longer just Paul's to bear. It had been successfully transferred, a parasitic inheritance. Paul had gotten his second chance, but at a horrifying cost. He had returned not for his son, but to give him the pain he had carried for so long. And somewhere in the dark, the ghost smiled. The warning signs Tim's alarm clock was a siren's call to a war he was losing. Every morning was a battle against the crushing weight of exhaustion, a body screaming in protest with every strained muscle and pounding headache. He ignored it all. The missed meals, the late nights fueled by black coffee, and the desperate belief that one more project, one more deadline met, would finally bring the elusive peace he craved. He was a machine, a human engine running on fumes, and he refused to acknowledge the flashing red lights on his dashboard. This was not a story of a wake-up call. It was a descent into a body possessed. The collapse on the sidewalk wasn't a moment of clarity. It was the moment the old Tim died. He lay there, watching the world blur around him, feeling a strange and alien calm settle over his mind. When he finally woke up in the hospital, the doctors spoke of stress, of burnout, of a body that had simply given out. But Tim knew the truth. His body hadn't given out, it had given in. A new tenant had moved in. Tim's recovery was a horrifying pantomime. He began to eat wholesome, nutrient-rich foods, but the hunger that gnawed at him was insatiable, and it wasn't his own. He started taking long, meditative walks in the park, but he wasn't finding balance, he was being led. His feet following a path he didn't recognize, drawn to places that were dark and secluded. The harmony he was building with his mind and body was a terrible, unspoken agreement. The mind was surrendering and the body was being taken over. He wasn't learning to listen to himself. He was learning to obey. The aches and pains were gone, but they had been replaced by a chilling silence. There were no longer any warnings. The voice that had once screamed enough had been silenced, replaced by a cold, calculating calm. Tim had pushed himself to the limit, and in doing so, he had created an opening, a vacancy. And something had been waiting patiently for a body to finally say enough so that it could step in and take over. He was no longer a hardworking man striving for success. He was a vessel, a perfect, quiet, well-maintained shell for a parasitic will. His story wasn't a powerful reminder to listen to yourself before it's too late.